You know, in the history of science, some relationships are just as powerful as the discoveries they create. And today, we're diving into the story of two of the 18th century's brightest stars. Their dynamic, a mix of collaboration and intense competition, gave us some of the most beautiful and powerful tools in all of modern physics. So, let's get right into it. The big question here, the one that makes their story so fascinating, is this. Were Leonhard Euler and Joseph Louis Lagrange friends, or were they rivals? The answer, as you'll see, isn't that simple, but exploring it tells us so much about genius, ambition, and how science actually moves forward. All right, to really get this, we've got to go back in time, to the mid-1700s. Just picture it. One man is the undisputed king of mathematics, a total legend, and a brilliant young newcomer is just about to step onto the world stage. So on one side, you've got Leonhard Euler. By the 1750s, this guy was an absolute titan, the most celebrated, most prolific mathematician of his era, a living legend working in Berlin. And on the other side, we have Joseph Louis Lagrange, almost 30 years younger. He was this incredible, formidable genius, but still pretty much unknown, working away in his hometown of Turin. We've got the established master and the emerging prodigy, and their worlds were about to collide in a huge way.
Now, their story doesn't kick off in some fancy university hall or a lab. Nope, it begins the old-fashioned way, through the mail. It all started with a letter about a famous physics problem, a letter that would spark a conversation and literally change the course of science.
So get this, in 1755, a 19-year-old Lagrange, full of confidence, decides he's going to send his solution to this super famous puzzle, the Tautochron problem, directly to the master himself, Euler. I mean, what a bold move, right? But Lagrange knew he'd found a powerful new method, and he knew it was something special. So what exactly is this Tautochron problem? Well, imagine a ramp. The puzzle is to figure out the perfect shape for that ramp, a curve so perfect that if you roll a ball down it, it reaches the bottom in the exact same amount of time, no matter where you start it from. Whether you start it way up high or just a few inches from the end, they finish in a dead heat. It's one of those questions that sounds simple, but trust me, it takes some serious mathematical firepower to solve. Now, Euler could have easily been dismissive. Who's this kid? But he didn't. He instantly saw the pure genius in what Lagrange had done. And not only did he praise the young man's work, he did something incredible. He actually held back his own research on the topic so that Lagrange could publish first and get all the credit. I mean, wow. That act of generosity kicked off this amazing correspondence that led them to basically invent a whole new field of math, which Euler himself would later name the calculus of variations.
So with Euler, the biggest name in the game, championing his work, you'd think Lagrange would jump at the chance to go work with him, right? But this is where the story gets really, really interesting. This is where we start to see a bit of professional tension creep in.
So here's the real head-scratcher. Euler, who's now a massive fan of Lagrange, invites him to come join him at the Prussian Academy in Berlin. I mean, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. So why on earth would Lagrange keep saying no? And he didn't just turn him down once. Over the next few years, Euler and others kept sending invitations to Berlin. And every single time, Lagrange came up with a reason to refuse. And this wasn't just him being shy. It was about ambition. It was about him wanting to carve out his own legacy.
And what was really going on? Well, it all boils down to this perfectly stated idea. Lagrange did not want to be anyone's shadow. He knew how good he was, and he was worried that if he went to Berlin, he'd always be seen as second fiddle to the colossal figure of Euler. He wasn't looking for a supporting role. He was waiting to be the star.
And you know what? Lagrange's patience, his strategy, it completely paid off. He didn't pick a fight or cause a scene. He just waited for the perfect moment. A moment that would let him step out of Euler's shadow and directly into the spotlight. The way it all went down was just a masterclass in timing. Early 1766, Euler decides he's leaving Berlin to go back to St. Petersburg. Boom, a vacancy opens up. Immediately, their mutual friend, D'Alembert, writes to Lagrange telling him the spot is open. The King of Prussia, wanting only the best, offers Lagrange the job, and by October, he's in Berlin, not as Euler's junior, but as his successor.
And this quote from D'Alembert's letter just says it all, doesn't it? M. Euler is leaving. If you want to replace him, you have only to write me a word. The path was finally totally clear. Lagrange could now take the job on his own terms as the #1 guy, the undisputed mathematical leader in Berlin.
So Lagrange got what he wanted. He got the top job. But here's the fascinating part. Despite all this professional maneuvering, their intellectual legacies were still completely intertwined. In fact, their combined genius would go on to create one of the most powerful concepts in all of physics.
It all comes back to that very first letter. The calculus of variations, the field they co-created, is basically the math of finding the best possible path. How do you find the fastest route, the most efficient shape, or the path of least resistance? It's how you'd calculate the quickest way down a mountain for a skier. Euler saw the incredible power in Lagrange's method right away and was the one who gave this new field its name.
And out of this new field came an equation of just stunning elegance and unbelievable power. It's called the Lagrangian, and it totally rewrites the rules of classical mechanics, describing everything from a simple falling apple to the complex orbit of a planet.
And this is it. L equals T minus V. It looks almost too simple, right? But what it means is profound. The Lagrangian, L, is simply the kinetic energy of a system, that's the energy of motion, minus its potential energy, which is its stored energy. And it turns out that nature is, well, kind of lazy in the best way possible. It always picks the path that minimizes a thing called action, which comes directly from this simple formula. It's a whole new, beautiful way to see the universe.
The legacy of this one idea is just staggering. The Lagrangian is a cornerstone of modern physics. You literally can't do Einstein's general relativity or quantum mechanics without it. But it goes way beyond that. It's used in robotics, designing spacecraft, simulating the airflow in hyper-clean manufacturing rooms, and even figuring out how to deliver medicine into our lungs more effectively. It is, quite simply, everywhere.
So all of this brings us right back to where we started. After the mentorship, the strategic sidestepping, this incredible intertwined legacy, what's the verdict? Were they friends or rivals?
Well, the truth is, it's just not that black and white. They weren't pals in the way we think of friends today, hanging out and grabbing a drink. But they were absolutely intellectual peers, and they were connected by a deep, deep admiration for each other's minds. Euler championed Lagrange from the very beginning, and Lagrange always respected Euler's monumental work. And that's really the key takeaway here. Their relationship wasn't just one thing. It was a complex mix. It was part mentorship, part mutual respect, and part subtle professional rivalry. And it was that unique combination, that tension between the master and the prodigy, that created this incredible energy that pushed both of them and science itself to amazing new heights.
It really leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it? Their story is a perfect example of how scientific progress is often born from these messy, complex human relationships. And it really makes you wonder, who are the great respectful rivals of our time? And what amazing discoveries will their dynamic give to the world of tomorrow?